All right, welcome. We are here today for a little post-lunch chat with James Key Wallace from New Hampshire Business Finance Authority and Chris Johnson from New Hampshire Municipal Association. Um, the three of us got together to put this hour for you on the calendar. Hopefully you're here because you are a municipal official or staff or a volunteer at your municipality and you've heard about CPACER and you think it's a good idea and you're starting to ask questions about how to actually implement it. And you're starting to get questions that you don't know how to answer from your colleagues and your municipal officials. And the intent of today is to give everyone an overview of what CPACER is, but then to spend most of our time diving into the nitty-gritty details of what you really need to understand as a municipal staff member or municipal official if you're going to go ahead and adopt this and implement this program. So there will be lots of times for questions. We will give you a good rundown of responses to the questions that we have received because Chris and James and I have been on the receiving end of many of your questions about this to date, which is why we put this webinar together. And then, of course, we are available to you afterwards as well. So a few thank yous. Of course, thank you to NHBFA and NHMA for co-hosting this Q&A hour. We also had a lot of help from our partners at the RPCs, the New Hampshire Planners Association, Plan New Hampshire, and others to get the word out to you about this webinar. So thank you to everyone who helped us make sure that you all could be here. And I'm just going to let the three of us who are going to be the talking heads today do a quick introduction of who we are so you can put names to faces. My name is Sarah Brock. I am at Clean Energy New Hampshire. I run the Energy Circuit Rider program, which hopefully most of you are already aware of. We provide free technical assistance. And by technical assistance, I mean sort of anything you need related to energy related projects in your municipality. We also help small businesses, but I'm here with my municipal technical assistance hat on. One of the things that we can do is help your municipality adopt CPACER, which is why I am here today. James, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm James Key Wallace. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority. Most folks know us about our role in helping small businesses, large businesses, and nonprofits get access to financing to grow and make jobs in your communities. We were also asked by the legislature to rewrite the CPACE laws and then administer the program in a way that was usable for project owners to help kind of improve development and improve existing buildings in towns and cities across the state, but do it in a way that's easy for our participating towns and doesn't put a lot of burden on them. And so I'm looking forward to talking about it today.
Thanks. And Chris?
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Chris Johnston. I'm an attorney with the Municipal Association. We provide legal advice and training services to municipal members. As of right now, I believe all municipalities are members of NHMA. And we also provide government government relations advocacy services for municipalities. And our government relations team worked with some legislators on the amendments last year to the CPACER program and the one that's in the legislature now. And that's how we became involved. And we've begun to receive questions as well from our members about adopting this program and what it would mean. So I'm happy to be here today and help explain it.
Thank you. Thank you both. So here's the plan for today. We're going to get a brief CPACER overview from James. His team is the program administrator and can make sure we're all speaking the same language. Then we're going to get into our deep dive, and we're thinking of doing this in three parts. We're going to start by talking about what you're signing up for. If you go ahead and adopt CPACER, what is the actual administrative reality of operating this at a municipality? Second, we're going to talk about the risks and liabilities and protections involved with CPACER. And then third, assuming we've convinced you that you want to do this, what is the actual process to adopt CPACER for your municipality? So we're going to walk through each of those. I'm hoping that you will pepper us with questions in the chat throughout. This is really meant to be for you. What do you need in order to feel clear and confident about adopting CPACER in your community? So don't be shy. I'll be moderating questions throughout. Now, if we don't get to everything, I'll make sure that we send out responses after the fact. And of course, you can always contact us. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, no, one more thing. Hold on. I guess I didn't put it in there. Okay, I have a legal disclaimer for us that I somehow did not, I accidentally deleted. So, Christine, you're going to help me do a verbal version of this.
Certainly, of course.
Go for it.
Yes, which we felt the need to include because I am an attorney and I do give legal advice to our members, but this this webinar is intended to be informational, but it is not intended as legal advice. And the information that's presented today is current as of today. If you were to look back at this at a later date, the law may have changed at that point. Things may be different, but it is intended to provide you up-to-date information as we have it so far today. If you have specific legal questions, you should contact your municipal attorney. And if you are an NHMA member, you can contact us as well through our legal inquiries email address, which is what was included in the information.
And I just put that in the chat for you. A couple of places you can reach out to for help. Thank you, Chris. Way to pinch hit for me. So I'm going to hand it over to James to kick us off with a CPACER, very brief, high-level overview so that we can get into the deeper dive. Go for it.
Great. Sure. Thanks, Sarah. So I'm going to just mention a little bit about what CPACER is for just some level setting. The point of the webinar today isn't to get into exactly CPACER as a program itself. We really want to focus on what CPACER means for you as municipalities. But CPACER at a high level is a private lending program, meaning loans from private lenders, right? It's not money from the state. It's not money from the town. It's private lenders to privately owned projects for commercial properties, which in New Hampshire means anything you think of as commercial, right? Retail, storefront, industrials, all those kind of things, and including multi-family of 5 or more units is considered commercial under New Hampshire law. So it's, private loans to private property owners for the purpose of making smart, common sense energy improvements to those buildings. And it can be for building new buildings, so new development in the town, or it can be for improving existing buildings, so retrofitting. Think of it's pretty wide berth, right? It could be insulation, solar, more efficient boiler conversions. Like there's a lot of things that can fit into CPACER. About 40 states across the country use CPACER. So it's new-ish to New Hampshire, but it's not new across the country. It's a program that has a small role for us at the BFA and a very small role for you at the municipality to allow these projects to get their private loans, and we'll kind of go through that. But it's a pretty neat product because unlike a loan from a bank, and the CPACE loans go alongside a bank, CPACE loans are not secured by a mortgage on the property. They're secured by what we call a special assessment, meaning the lender has a similar level of security to a town when you have a tax lien on the property, except that if the property is sold, let's say someone finishes their project and they own it for years and they sell it to the next person, that CPACE loan actually sort of sticks to the property. So the next person who owns the building, they take over those payments. And they're very secure. So the lenders can offer very long-term loans, which means the ROI on the energy savings all of a sudden starts to make a lot of sense. So it's a new kind of tool for developers to make better buildings that are also more economically efficient. And it is just kind of a way to make these long-term improvements in the stock of our buildings across the state. So that's it kind of as a whole. It definitely will help any town that adopts it in attracting development of whatever kind you want, it doesn't override your municipal approvals. It doesn't displace your municipal tax collections. It doesn't do any of that. It's just another tool to help projects that you as a town approve be successful in getting financing. So that's CPACER at a very high level. There are plenty of documents on our website that get into the more details of the program. But really, we want to talk about, well, what does it mean for me? I'm a town official. I'm a town staff person. Like, how does this work for me?
Perfect. And I just put in the chat a document that hopefully many of you received with your invitation to this webinar, which is just 2 pages that goes through the like really high level basics in case you need some talking points or a refresher on what we're talking about. A couple of quick clarifying questions that came up in the chat. James, one is from Christopher. Are those individuals an LLC, a corporation, or something else? I think thinking about who is eligible for these loans.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the loan is actually attached to the property, not to the person who owns the company. So as long as it's a commercial property, oh, he's saying no. Who are the lenders?
Gotcha.
Okay,
Okay,
I
thank you.
see it
That's
down
helpful.
there. Yeah, yeah. No, good. Yeah, fair question. It's any number of folks. There's actually a list on our website. We have to register and vet the lenders. There's a list on our website of folks who've completed that process so far. I think there's 4 of them at the moment. CPACE lenders are generally traditional kind of financial institutions, right? They're subsidiaries of large banks. There are a group called CDFIs, which are community development financial institutions, which are kind of nonprofit community-based lenders and all sorts of folks. CPACE loans are viewed as kind of low risk, high impact loans, so they're attractive to like fixed income funds. Um, anyone that kind of likes long-term, steady financial instruments tend to be CPACE lenders.
Right. He says, gotcha, thanks. So we did it.
All right.
And then the other clarification is, are these loans available for municipal buildings?
No, no
Sorry.
private loans for privately owned property, also not available for BFA owned buildings either. So don't feel too bad. Not that we have any.
Are there any other high-level clarifying questions? Again, I dropped a link to that 2-pager if you want to pull that up and reference, but if not, then well, all right. What about nonprofits, nursing homes?
Yes, sure. Yep. Privately owned commercial property means anything you'd think of as commercial plus residential multi-unit of 5 or more. So if it's a housing, like an apartment building, right? But it doesn't matter if it's owned by a nonprofit or for-profit. Could be a senior living facility, nursing home, could be a factory, could be an apartment building. All good.
Thank you, Michelle, for noting that the link didn't actually get to you. So it is now in the chat. Feel free to open it. And then, yes, another just clarifying that this is not for residential, only for commercial. There's an asterisk there.
Yeah, it's just the residential has to be 5 or more units. That's considered commercial under state law. A museum, yep, that's fine. Commercial property. And the lender has to be willing to make the loan, right? These are still private lenders like a bank. But for eligibility for CPACE, you have to just be in a town that's joined the program, which we'll talk about. It has to be a commercial property, and the improvements being made have to be eligible CPACE improvements, which are energy related. There's a big list on the website and the documents to kind of go through all the things, but it's pretty much everything you would think of energy savings wise.
And then mixed use is the next sort of clarifying.
Yeah, so mixed use is an interesting question. I mean, I think generally the answer is yes, mixed use is considered commercial. So CPACE loans, as I mentioned, are attached to the property. So as long as the mixed use was for part of one lot, right? Because it's it's a tax, there's a special assessment on the property itself. Yeah, no problem. I mean, If you had like a commercial property over here and then a separate lot with like a single family home or a non-commercial property on it, you would not be able to do that, but you would be able to do the commercial property on its lot. So
Great.
great.
Um, so I'm going to transition us into the deep dive section. I saw a question from Bill in the chat that starts to get there. So Bill, perfect segue. You are right on it. Before I do that, though, I just want to do a quick screen share. I linked for you that one pager in the chat. That includes a link to the program website. I'm going to show you how to get there and a couple things you need to know because there's a lot of information we're going to reference today that you can find already online and will be very helpful to you if you do proceed with adopting a CPACER district in your community. So this is the NHBFA website. Under loans, you'll find CPACER. And if you just Google CPACER New Hampshire, this website will come up. There's a program guidebook that is very helpful if you have not read it. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure you knew how to find is right down here. It's the document list. And James is going to screen share some of these and orient you a bit later. But as someone who has been helping a lot of municipalities understand and work their way through CPACER adoption, I probably reference this website like 5 or 6 times a day because everything that you need is probably here. So now you've seen how to get there. We will keep reminding you about that as today goes on. James, I think what I'd love for you to do is jump right into the first bucket. I mentioned we were going to do this in 3 buckets. The first bucket is a deep dive on the administrative reality of running a CPACER program. The second bucket is like, help me understand the risks and liabilities, like what can go wrong. And the third bucket is, okay, how do I adopt this thing? So let's start with bucket 1. What are we signing up for, my friend?
Okay, so let's pretend you've adopted CPACER in your town, and well, geez, what did I just sign up for? Okay, what do I get? What do I have to do? So the intent when we rewrote the legislation for CPACER was to have our partner municipalities do, frankly, as little as possible, right? We all have too much to do. I mean, our towns in particular are burdened with so much and have very little less and less every day to get those things done. So we're very sensitive to that. So it's a very small responsibility. The state has stepped in to essentially do almost everything in the CPACER process, but I'll take you through some of the details. So when somebody applies for a CPACE loan, you get a property owner. They apply to a lender directly, right? It doesn't go through the BFA, doesn't go through the town. Let's say that the lender says, "Yep, I'm going to make this loan, the CPACE loan." We at the BFA have an application process that we've developed that they submit to us as the program administrator. And it contains all types of information, right? The property, the nature of the improvements, the terms and conditions of the loan, all of the things that are required to make sure this is an eligible CPACER loan. So we go through a review process. The town, like, unless you kind of happen to hear about it, which you probably will, because the project is probably going through some type of municipal approval process, the standard process at the same time for site plan or permitting or whatever. Um, so we get this application, we review it. Let's say it's approved. So on our end, everything's good to go. The first step will, for you guys at that point, is you will get this package from us. And it will come with documents that have shown all the eligibility is completed. There's a CPACE loan in the queue. We're ready to go. And you'll have that. And then we will also supply you with what is the closing date of that loan. And let's say it's, in a week or whatever. On the closing, the only thing that the town actually has to file is a document at the Registry of Deeds, right? It's a recording of the assessment, which is the evidence of the loan and the tool the lender uses to secure their financing. So because it's a special assessment against the property, only the municipality has the legal authority to file that document, which you'll get pre-filled out, ready to go at the Registry of Deeds. You can also simply delegate the filing of that document to the closing attorney. doing the CPACE loan. So if you choose to do that, which we encourage because it's easier for you, then there's actually nothing that you have to do. You just do that. There are a couple checks that we ask the municipality to provide us with prior to the loan actually closing. And these are all in a nice handy checklist for you. That way, when you get this package from us, you can just sort of run through it. I don't know, Sarah, if you could bring that up. This is the
Yeah,
municipal.
happy to. You can also do that as well if you would prefer, but I'll throw it
Yeah,
up on my screen if that's
yeah, if
easier
you've got it, that'd be great.
on it.
I can barely do one thing at once, let alone two, right? So, um, so, so this checklist is, a guide for municipalities. Again, it's on the list on the website. So this is what you don't have to use this. This is just like a tool for you. So you can see at the top it says, "Yep, we got the application, right?" And they gave us the closing date, so you can keep track of when that occurred. We do ask you just to check the property to make sure that the town is up to date on your real estate taxes. Not that CPACE gets in the way or doesn't come before your taxes or affect your municipal taxes, but we just want to know that someone's not a tax delinquent before there's some approved financing in place. Ditto that you don't have any record of any liens, involuntary liens like mechanic liens or something like that. Um, so then you'll get copies of all the form documents. One is the assessment agreement, which is just this evidences the loan is secured. The town signs that because you are placing the assessment. There is the notice, which is what actually gets filed at the registry of deeds. So if anyone looks up the property, they see it's there. And then there's the assignment of that assessment to the lender. So it's just three signatures on a set of form documents that are the same for every deal. They're also on our website. And then you just give those back to us. And that is it for closing a CPACE loan. At the end of the day, many years later, let's say the CPACE loan is paid off. You'll get a notification from us 15 years later that says, "Hey, that loan paid off." The town says, "Great." You file the release of the notice of the assessment at the registry of deeds, just basically saying, "Hey, remember that thing we filed 15 years ago?" Again, you can delegate that to the attorney, the deal attorney being paid for by the borrower if you want. On either one of the cases, if the town wants to use their attorney to file the paperwork at the registry of deeds, you can get reimbursed for that. It's paid by the borrower. So if for some reason you want to do it yourself, you certainly can. You also just don't have to. A very common question we get is, well, is the town responsible for billing this borrower? Are we responsible for tracking how much is due does it have to go on the tax bill? Any of this? The answer to that is no. The responsibility for billing and collection is all delegated to the lender, just like any normal loan, through this paperwork that I just mentioned. So this is not a town-run loan. You aren't chasing the payments or even tracking it. Um, so it's very, very light from an administrative perspective. It's just a couple documents you sign and one that you file. And even that, you can have someone else do it for you. And if you do it yourself, you can get reimbursed.
So you almost addressed this, but I just want to make sure it's perfectly clear because I get the question a lot. This has nothing to do with tax bills. Nothing shows up on a tax bill related to CPACER.
Yeah, I mean it's really up to the municipality. I mean, there's nothing to prevent a municipality from wanting to put the presence of the assessment on the tax bill. But there's nothing under the law that obligates you to do so. The lender won't require you to do so. The BFA does not require you to do so. It's this is not it's not a tax. The CPACE loan is not a tax, and it's not even really a tax lien. It's a special assessment that has similar characteristics, but the responsibilities are all held by the lender.
Yes. Do you have anything to chime in with?
Um, oops, sorry. I didn't, but I can see that Todd is asking us
Oh,
about the next subject we were going to discuss. Um,
I mostly saw you on mute, and just if you had something to add, wanted
oh
to make
no,
sure you had
no,
a month. Great. You're
continue as
fine
you
then.
are.
Perfect. I am curious if anyone has any questions bubbling up about the administrative piece of running CPACER, who's involved in the lift. 'Cause we're going to move on to risk in a moment, but I don't want to overlook anything if someone has a burning question. Feel free to ask later on if it comes up for you. Yeah, we have one come in. You can probably read this yourself, James, but in theory, do these energy improvements increase assessments? I'm also curious to learn what an assessment agreement means.
Sure, that's no problem. Let me do the second question first. Sarah, can you navigate back to the document
Oh,
list?
yes, of course. Thank you. Almost forgot I was screen sharing. Um, just a moment. Ah, I
So
know. The
while she's getting there, to answer your question, we have a sample assessment agreement. I believe it's on. I think it's on the website.
yeah,
Um,
I'll bring it up in just a second.
It might be helpful to note that it uses the word assessment, but it doesn't mean that CPACER has anything to do with the way the property is assessed for the purposes of taxation. Um, the use of the word assessment can be confusing because it means more than one thing. In this context, it's talking about um, the assessment in more in terms of a lien on the property, which is really more akin to what this is. It's essentially saying the security for this loan is this encumbrance on the property that looks a lot like a mortgage and looks a lot like a tax lien, but it isn't quite either one of those things. Um, don't let the word assessment confuse you. It has nothing to do with tax assessing at all or the assessed value.
right. And you'll see the first bullet under the closing documents is a sample of the assessment agreement. The assessment agreement is the agreement between the property owner and the town to say, yes, put this special assessment, which evidences my debt from my lender against my property. Okay. And so it's sort of like Christine said, it's kind of like your mortgage. You're like, yep, I'm pledging my property to my lender like I do. The town is one of the parties who executes this because it is a assessment against the property, which municipalities are the ones that have the authority to file, which is why it's a partnership with the town. But that's all you have to do is just file it. You don't maintain it, you're not responsible for it. You can delegate the filing again to the closing attorney. It's just an administrative one-time step. Um, so your first question was about improving value. So I think the short answer is yes, that they do. So CPACE lenders are lenders and they want their money back, right? Just like a bank does. And they want to see that the energy savings are typically greater than the cost of the debt that's being paid. And commercial property is evaluated in a number of ways, but the most useful way is, the value of its income that it produces. The more income a property produces, the more valuable it is. And so if you're saving money more than the debt that it costs you, your net operating income goes up for that commercial property. Higher net operating income means higher value in the marketplace. So the appraised values for really like any other improvement, right? They have to make sense, but they do. When a town values its land for its own tax-based processes, it doesn't like you value it for what it is and how it's improved. The fact that there's a C-PACE loan that lent the money doesn't actually matter. You just value the property the way you always value a property based on what it is and however you all do it. Um, so I hope that answers that question.
Brian's got a question. Is the town putting that lien on the property?
Yes. So the town is filing the assessment and recording that at the Registry of Deeds, or you're delegating that most commonly just to the closing attorney that's doing all the documents. So technically, you're filing it because you have the authority to file it. You're simultaneously assigning that lien to the lender who's providing the money, and the lender's agreeing to do all the billing and collections and all that kind of stuff. Um, and all of the documents everywhere expressly say both the BFA and, but also more importantly, you all, the municipalities, have no liability whatsoever for any of these loans. Doesn't matter what happens ever. We aren't the ones, you aren't the ones paying these loans. These are just loans from their lender.
Um,
It's also useful to note, I think, that the towns are also not tracking this loan along the way. When there's a tax lien placed on property, the tax collector is making sure that the interest is accruing properly, and they're keeping track of all of that in their software. For a CPACER loan, that's not happening. There's no need for the town to keep track of it at all. And we'll talk about what happens when everything goes wrong in a little bit, but um, but it's not the town's problem to track that and watch that.
there's one other question that I've had from folks who have read the statute. The statute leaves the door open that if the town wants to have all of the responsibility, it can, but also makes it very clear that you can delegate in the way that James is noting. Is there anything you want to say about that, Chris or James, about the intent of why the legislation was a little bit open-ended in wording?
Sure. I mean, I can answer that. I think we didn't want to take anything away from towns. We're big believers in, towns controlling their destiny within their jurisdictions as it's appropriate. And the old CPACE law had towns doing everything. Like you were building contractor lists, you had to approve the lenders, you had to manage the billing and make the disbursements. It was like, what was going on? And nobody used it. There were no, it wasn't a workable program. And so the state said, BFA, can you do all this? We said yes. We didn't want to take away a particularly ambitious community's, ability to like do all this if they want to do it. Um, so the options there. Um, I have not heard any municipality express interest in such a process.
Nor have I, to be clear. Um, okay, and then there was a follow-up, just is the draft assessment agreement available? And I replied in the chat and said yes, and I linked you to the document list. One of the things that has been available from the outset of this program, every template document that you hear referenced here, it's already up, so you can see what those documents will look like when you get them. They're already drafted, and they will all look very similar. Okay, do we dare pivot into the what happens if everything goes horribly wrong section of our day? That does not
I think
preclude
we need
any
to
of the,
address it.
I agree. That does not preclude anyone from asking other administrative type questions. Please keep them coming. Let's go ahead and pivot. Let's talk about risk and liability. What I did was pull together a couple of the questions that I've had, and then we'll see what other questions you all have. So let's just go through that. And for Chris and James, what I'm hoping the group will take away is both what could happen if everything goes wrong and what are the types of risks, but also what are the protections that are in statute, because I understand it, the legislature was pretty thoughtful, and James, your team and NHMA were pretty thoughtful in designing this thing to make sure that there were protections in statute for towns. So some of the questions we've heard, I think we already answered the first one, which is, does this have an impact on assessed value? I think we've answered that.
Right.
Another question that I tend to get is, does adopting CPACER mean I'm suddenly going to get a lot more big developments in my town? There's a bit of a fear of opening a can of worms. Any reaction to that?
The answer is no. I mean, not as such. It's there are a lot of different things that municipalities can do that incentivize development. And there are certain zoning mandates that have been handed down by the legislature that municipalities have no control over, that might result in increased development. Um, but I would think of CPACER more along the lines of um, an optional, something optional that a municipality could adopt if it wanted to help. It's one tool. It's a financing tool, essentially, for developments. It would not open the door for all kinds of extra developments that would not otherwise be authorized in a town because CPACER has nothing to do with zoning and local land use regulation. All of that would still apply exactly as it does today. The only thing that adopting this program would do is allow property owners in that municipality to access another pot of financing money or access another financing mechanism that would not otherwise be available to them for a project that they want to do. And they wouldn't be allowed to do a project in a municipality that was not going to be allowed under local zoning and subdivision regulations and building codes and all of that.
Okay. Um, and then the only other two things were one, which we've already dealt with, which is what is the burden on my staff? And I think we've covered that. And then finally, it's just what's the worst case scenario? And frankly, it goes right back to the question from, I think it was Todd in the chat, which is what happens if the property owner stops making payments? I think it's the most obvious worst case, but I would love to hear
Yep.
either of your thoughts on what can go wrong with CPACER.
Well, there are three major things that if I were a municipal official, I would be worried about. Um, and I don't think you need to be worried about any of them, actually. So the first one is what happens if the property owner stops paying their property taxes? Because you've got this CPACER assessment out there, and you have the regular property taxes being assessed. So um, a CPACER assessment sits right below property taxes. Property taxes have a super priority over all other liens on property. So if there's a regular mortgage out there, no matter when it was created, taxes always jump to the front of the line. And municipalities are used to that because that's their only remedy to get repaid for delinquent taxes. Um, the CPACER loan sits immediately behind municipal taxes, but in front of everybody else. And which is what makes it so attractive as a security tool for financing. Um, so if the property owner has delinquent taxes, the municipality can proceed in exactly the same way that they normally would. They can perfect their tax lien at the registry. Everything is fine. The CPACE lender would have the ability to pay off the tax delinquency if they wanted to. They, in that way, they'd be very much like a mortgage holder. They also can come in and pay off a tax delinquency because they're protecting their interest, their security interest. Um, and if the municipality needs to take a tax deed on a property, you can do that just the way you normally would do it. The only thing that's different is that the municipality would then have an obligation to turn around and sell the tax deeded property in a relatively short amount of time, following all of the normal procedures, the 90-day notice to the former owner, all of the normal things you would do selling tax deeded property. And when that happens, the town would get repaid whatever it is owed on its tax delinquency first. And then the CPACE lender would get paid whatever they were due um, up to the point when the person stopped paying, um, not any future. That the major difference between that and a mortgage is it's not the whole CPACER loan that has to get paid back. It's just whatever the delinquent part is right now, if they have any delinquency, whatever is owed. And then there might be excess proceeds, and you do what you would normally do with that and return it to the former owner. So you are in the same position that you would have been. The only thing that's different is that you can't sit on the property. You'd have to turn around and sell it, which is good practice anyway, quite frankly. Um, the next thing that can go wrong is that the property owner is delinquent on their CPACE payments. Um, and if that happens, that is the lender's issue. That is not the municipality's issue. The lender has their own ability to proceed against the property. They can take the property and sell it. And if they do that, the town gets paid first if there is any outstanding tax delinquency at that point. So the town is still made whole and your lien, you would get paid. So you wouldn't have to worry about that. And the remainder of the CPACE loan, whatever it is at that point, would still be attached to the property and still sit there, but you would be made whole and you don't have to do anything. And there might be other financing because this is a piece of a financing package, usually, if it's a development. And if there's another lender out there that needs to foreclose, it's the same thing. If there is any municipal tax that is owed at the time of the foreclosure, you get paid first, just like you always would. So it should have no impact at all on the municipality's ability to get paid and security for taxes, which is nice. James, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's exactly right, Christine. I think just to make clear from the like a bank's perspective, because we designed the program to work well with municipalities and make sure they weren't really impacted, at all through this process. But also, the program has some checks and balances on the lender side. So, like their traditional bank, actually, as part of the original application package that gets approved, has to consent to the CPACE financing. A borrower just can't run out and start like borrowing money under CPACE and not telling a normal bank about it. Um, that's sort of just to make sure that the bank is comfortable with the transaction. Um, Banks, once brought up to speed on how CPACE works, are generally favorable to the transactions because when something does go wrong, as Christine mentioned, only the past due CPACE payments get caught up through a foreclosure sale, for example. So the CPACE loan is 90 days past due. The CPACE lender gets 90 days worth of payments, but the rest of that CPACE loan is the responsibility of the future buyer. But meanwhile, the town gets their money, the bank gets their mortgage money in full. So banks look at it as more capital into the project without really eating into their risk, as long as the overall cash flow ability to make your monthly payments looks good. Um, so it's designed to be, cautiously administered, approved by everybody, and when correctly constructed, sort of win-win.
There's a couple of questions coming in. So I'm gonna give Chris and James a moment to take a look at them. I think we addressed the first one, which was related to whether the primary lenders are reluctant at all to give priority to CPACE, and I think your comments address that, but Paul, let us know if not.
We have one on whether a CPACER lien would show up on a search through the registry. And yes, that's the purpose. One of the purposes of recording the special assessment is there will be a special assessment and an assignment and a notice, and all of those things will show up in a registry search.
Yep.
There's a question from someone, I'm not sure which town, but they say, we are a unique town. We don't have adopted zoning or local building codes, so we do. So while we do have commercial buildings, we don't have specific commercial zones. Are there any roadblocks with relation to CPACE there?
No, so the CPACE eligibility is not related to the zoning of the town. It's the nature of the parcel. So if it's deemed a commercial property, which is defined under state laws, what's commercial, what's not, you know, then as long as they're making CPACE eligible improvements, they can go apply for their loan. Whether or not a municipality approves their project is their own business, with zoning and planning that you still have full control of.
And Charlie is asking whether there are any New Hampshire towns with a track record with CPACER so far. And this is, well, I'll answer part of it, and then James, you can chime in. There are 3 communities currently listed on the CPACER's website as approved municipalities, and we're going to get in the next section. So maybe this is a nice segue. And thank you, Tom, for my chiming in. Rye is one of them. Rye, Bristol, and Lebanon have all adopted a CPACER ordinance and are somewhere in the process of getting that program up and running. But I know that none of them have approved a CPACER loan yet because they only just adopted CPACER and are still working through the process. That being said, you are more than welcome to keep in touch with me, and I can help you connect with towns as they gain more experience. James, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think, a few places have begun. This is new for New Hampshire, so we're just getting started. There are 2 trade groups out there called the CPACE Alliance and CPACE Nation. They were pretty helpful in making some of the policy decisions on kind of like how do you write legislation and administer the program, because 40 states do this. So there's probably a lot of experience from lots of towns who have done this. The issue is not all states do it the same way. New Hampshire took a particularly aggressive approach in how far we went to reduce municipal burdens. Because I think part of it was the BFA is willing to do it, and part of it is just the unique nature of how our towns and cities and states interact. So we really tried to make this like easy. But I think you could certainly reach out to Sarah on that. And it looks like Charlie had a second question about concerns the state's giving preference to energy related projects, not other kinds of improvements. I don't think that they are. This isn't state money. This is private money for private projects. So there's no subsidies involved. The BFA has all kinds of programs for all type of development. I would say the CPACE, which has kind of an energy flavor, is like probably one of the smallest things that we do. So I wouldn't say that there's a preference. And actually, the way the BFA looks at this, I mean, like energy saving is great, but like I'm all about saving money, right? And I'm all about towns having tools to help development for the projects that the towns want, grow tax base, grow jobs. So I think that's why we're involved. We're the business finance authority, not the energy finance authority.
2 things I want to mention, and then we should transition to the last piece of what is the process to actually adopt. One is that I don't know if you explicitly mentioned it, Chris, but there is a piece of statute that explicitly says that under no circumstance can taxpayer dollars be used to pay off a CPACER loan. And that is
Yes, very
black and white.
important.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I put a link in the chat to the section of the CPACER FAQ that my team manages. That we get a lot of questions. We've been trying to capture the questions and answers all in one place. There's a big old section about what happens in the case of delinquency that mentions that piece of statute and goes into more depth than even what Chris did today. And then the other is that I don't know if you caught in the beginning, but CPACE is new to New Hampshire in this forum, but it is not new. 40 states have access to CPACE lending, and there's a lot of precedent for this kind of lending and these kinds of programs elsewhere in the country. So we're not exactly new here. Okay. Oh dear, thank you for letting me know my audio is cutting out. Please let me know if that continues. Let's transition to the last piece of today, which is how do you adopt CPACER? And I think, Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you first to explain what the statute requires, and then James, you can fill in with the more practical program perspective.
Sure, thank you. Okay, there are 2 main things, 2 main events that have to occur for a municipality to adopt it. One is that the municipality has to vote to adopt the program and establish a CPACER district, which can be a portion of a municipality or the whole municipality. It can be a particular zoning district. You can define that any way you want. That's the first step. And the second step is a vote to make certain findings about the public benefit of the program. And once those two things happen, then CPACER loans and projects can begin to happen. The way that those two steps occur is different depending on what kind of municipality you are. So in a city, all of that is done, all of that can be done by the city council or mayor and board of aldermen. The first step is to have your council or board of aldermen adopt a resolution, which adopts the district and establishes it. And then they can hold a public hearing on the findings that are required. Will adopting the program and using it confer a public benefit? And if the answer is yes, they take a vote on that, and then they're ready to go. And as I'm going through all of this, I assume that James is going to show you this later, but there are documents in the document list that will walk you through exactly how to do all of this. I'm just explaining it as an overview. There's also a choice in a city to submit the adoption question to voters at a regular municipal election. So the governing body, the city council or mayor and board of aldermen can choose to do it that way instead. And if the vote is yes by the voters, then your council or board holds the public hearing and votes on whether they can make those required findings, and you're off to the races. So that's a city. For towns, it's a little more complicated to figure out where you fall. If you're a charter town, you have to look at the charter and figure out whether things have to be done by town meeting or if the council can do all of it. In a pure town council town like Durham, the adoption can be done, it can be done by the town council just the way that a city could do it. So the town council would vote on adopting and establishing the district, and then it would hold a public hearing and vote to make the required public benefit findings. That all can happen at actually one meeting if it is noticed ahead of time as including the public hearing. So it can be pretty streamlined. Or they could choose to put it to a town meeting vote, if you have town meeting at all. In a pure town meeting town, which is the vast, vast majority of all of our towns in New Hampshire, it would be, again, a two-step process. The way the law is today, and there is a bill that I'll talk about in a minute that would make it easier, but the way it is today, the adoption question to adopt the program and establish a district would go on the warrant for the annual town meeting. It would be a warrant article. And yes, there is a draft of how you might write this. And only the governing body, it's the Board of Selectmen, can put this article on the warrant. It cannot be put there by petition the way some other kinds of things can. So that would go to town meeting. You'd have a discussion, you'd have a vote. It would not go on the official ballot unless you're an SB2 town. It would be voted on during the business session of town meeting, in case you're wondering about that. If it passes, then the Board of Selectmen would hold a public hearing and they would take a vote on whether they could make the required findings and proceed with the project, with the program. Or so there's a bill, Senate Bill 440, which has passed the Senate and is sitting in a committee right now in the House. It had a hearing 2 weeks ago. My understanding is it went well. If that passes and is signed by the governor, then instead of having to go to town meeting in a town meeting town, the whole program could be adopted by the Board of Selectmen instead, and also holding a public hearing. So it would be the same as in a town council town. The difference between a regular town meeting town and a town council town is that in a regular town meeting, the Board of Selectmen um, could decide that they are going to hold the public hearing on the adoption, um, and then vote on it. But 25 or more registered voters could petition the selectmen and require that the question go on the warrant for the annual town meeting. So there are a few different things in town government where that happens. Voters have the ability to say, no, we would like to make that decision instead of you. So there's that option. But if that doesn't happen, the Board of Selectmen can do the whole process themselves, just like a city council could. So that would be a lot more streamlined. And I have read all of the templates, and I'm going to turn it over to James in just a second, but I want to reiterate how important and really useful the templates are. If you are worried, I can assure you that they were written by a New Hampshire municipal attorney for whom I have great respect. And if you use them, first of all, don't reinvent the wheel. And second of all, please do have your town attorney or city attorney look at them before you use them. They are really good, and this will shortcut the process tremendously. But as with everything, I have to advise you to have your attorney look at it too. James?
Yes, great. Thanks, Christine. Yes, I agree. We gave these templates, attorney drafted templates as a resource on the website. It's in the documents list. Because we really needed to make sure that the resolutions and approval processes that you all use comply with the requirements in state statute to properly sign up for the program. If you have any questions at all, you can reach out to Sarah. You can reach out to NHMA. You use your town municipal attorney to do that. Or you can reach out to me. It's totally fine. We've helped people through it. It's not bad. It's actually, the voting part's pretty easy. I would say for the municipalities that are interested, I do encourage you to do it proactively. Sometimes towns are signing up as quickly as they can because there's a project that they want to see built that's like, well, hey, I'm getting a CPACE loan. What do you mean you haven't opted in yet? And then it's like this scramble. And so to avoid that, I would encourage folks, if you do plan to opt in, to do it, soon. That way you're not kind of caught flat-footed, when a project opportunity comes before the town.
Absolutely. Um, I'm just going to, whoops, present this for you. Um, Hopefully what you're seeing now is our contact information and a reinforcement of please reach out. I will make sure that all of you get a copy of this slide deck and a link to the recording. And because it was requested in the chat, I'll also make sure there's a transcript, a written transcript of the recording as well. The links to everything that we've mentioned, the documents list, the CPACER FAQ that I hinted at, which has a lot of sort of silly diddly little answers to detailed questions is linked here. And I would encourage you, if you are in the process of this, please don't be a stranger. Reach out to me. The Clean Energy New Hampshire team is happy to be your first line of defense for any of you trying to adopt PACER. We've got a lot of knowledge and resources, and we work very closely with NHMA and BFA. And you can also, if you already know your question is specifically legal in nature or specifically related to the program administration, you can reach out directly to BFA and NHMA as well with questions about that. So it's 2 o'clock. I'm happy to hang around for a bit if anyone wants to stick around, but thank you, Chris and James, and thank you all for being here. I hope this was helpful.
Great.
Getting a lot of
Thank you,
thank yous in the
Sarah.
chat.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Christine, and everyone else attending. We really do appreciate the work that you did pulling this together and everyone for taking the time to attend.
Yes, thank
Absolutely.
you very much.